Entrenched Echos by Oceanera 12. Chapter 6. Colored Chaos. 4 was confused. He was so confused right now that even Vio was quiet for once in his life because he couldn't even think. There were 2 of him, which wasn't the weirdest thing because there were actually 4 of him. The weird thing was that this particular version of him had been going through and killing some version of his friends, which meant most of his friends were probably dead. The only one he had left for sure was Hyrule, but even then, everyone had their weapons drawn and were backed up against walls and pots, eyes flickering back and forth between one another. There was confusion, distrust, and a bit of hope in their gazes, which, that seemed the mix for this whole situation. 4 himself was holding the 4 sword, which he did not remember drawing, and was ever so tempted to split, just so he had a better chance to actually survive the many evil/replica that may or may not want to kill him. Okay, Warrior said slowly. We know we can kill the bloody 4, right? Yes, Wild hissed, eyes narrowed in on the imposter. The 4, covered in blood, shook his head. I wouldn't recommend that. No one cares, fake! Wynn screamed. You killed Wars in time! He paused, looking at the other time that was still breathing. I think? He also killed you, Sky, and Twilight, Wild shouted out, which would mean, you're all fakes? By that logic, pup, Twilight muttered, you'd be fake too. Hyrule and Hyrule were just staring at each other, though one of them appeared more pale than the other. Bloody 4 caught 4's eye. 4 was surprised by the serious look. The Bloody 4 carefully held his sword up so everyone could see, then gently put it on the ground, all while keeping eye contact with 4. Then he stood up and put his hands up in a surrendering gesture. You need not worry yourself, brother. 4 felt like someone had just punched him in the stomach. His grip on the sword went lax and he inhaled sharply. That was impossible! Bloody 4 smiled at him, a familiar, sad, regretful smile that had haunted 4 for so long. I've always been a step behind you, he said softly. Now, I need you to do the same, just for a short while. 4's breath hitched. Shadow? Bloody 4 closed his eyes, and the image shifted. The bloodstains disappeared as the multicolored tunic turned into a pure black one, and the hair shifted into black. He opened his red eyes and gave 4 another smile. This one sang of mischief and chaos that Shadow was about to bring down on the group. Vio snatched control of the body with little protest. He surged forward with barely a hesitation. He ran forward and threw his arms around Shadow, gripping him tightly, like if he let go, this all would be a dream. Shadow returned the grip just as tight. I missed you too, Shadow said into 4's shoulder. There were confused shufflings and exclamations said behind him, but 4 paid little mind. Shadow lowered his voice to a whisper. When I tell you, let go and hit the ground. 4 made no reaction that he'd heard the order, but he did tighten his grip for a split second. Red, start blubbering, Shadow whispered. Red was ever so glad to do so. You jerk! Red gasped through tears. Don't ever scare us like that again! We thought you were dead after everything we did. We didn't even get to have ice cream together! Shadow's grip went slack, and 4 dropped to the ground. Up came Shadow's bow, which aimed and fired an arrow straight at one of the Hyrules, only for it to be intercepted by Legend's shield. 4 rolled over, feeling more than just a bit annoyed. What in the name of Hylia? Legend drew his sword, and Wild already had his bow pointed at Shadow, which 4 immediately blocked with his own shield. Wait! He screamed at all of the pointed attacks. He's on our side! He just shot and killed time! Warriors yelled back. The fake time! 4 yelled. That was the fake time! Shadow lowered his bow. If you allow me, I can remove the illusion's effect on the body. And how'd you do that? One of the Hyrules asked. Shadow glared at them. I kill you. No more killing! Legend growled, standing in front of both the Hyrules. We need to figure this out. Look, 4 began. If all of us were the fake ones, wouldn't we drop the act and kill the real Hyrule? So it would just stand to reason that everyone here is a real Link. There was a long pause as that logic sunk into the group. Swords half lowered and gazes drifted from distrust to realization, then hope. Then Wild lurched forward and threw his arms around Twilight, who returned the hug just as tightly. Thank Hylia. Wind made a kind of strangled noise with his throat before dropping his sword on the ground and lunging at Warriors. The captain caught him easily, returning the hug, but his gaze was now on two Hyrules, standing on the opposite side of the room. That means the only fake left is one of the Hyrules, Four finished, which Shadow can easily identify because, well, that's his whole thing. Warriors frowned. But how do we know we can trust Shadow? He pointed at the dead time. For all we know, he could have killed the real time for some reason. Shadow shrugged. Believe what you want, I'll do what I want. Then he lunged at one of the Hyrules. Four grabbed him by the tunic, and it yanked him back as Hyrule screamed out in horror, ducking behind Legend for protection. Shadow calmed down. I'll be calm when he's dead! Legend shook the Hyrule's grip off of him and shoved the kid away towards the other Hyrule. Oh no, I am not sheltering some fake Hyrule. He pointed at both of them. So both of you stand there with no weapons while we figure this out. The Hyrule he pushed away looked hurt. Legend, it's me. Ah! Legend shook his head. None of that! Now, whoever the real ruler is, tell me something only you would know. Both Hyrules appeared to think. You hate eating Wild's fish? Hey! Wild exclaimed. Well, the other Hyrule began. Technically, he just hates fish in general, not just Wilds. Right. Hyrule snapped his fingers. Something else then. Legend thinks Wolfie's gonna murder us in our sleep one day? Wild and Time both gave Legend a condescending look. Twilight looked a bit horrified. The hero shrugged. What? He's a frickin' wolf. I don't think he's planning on it, but a wolf has to eat. The other Hyrule pursed his lips. Sky carved me a fairy wood carving once, and then I accidentally burned it, and I felt really bad about it and was scared to tell him, but he just smiled and made me another one. Sky frowned. That's true. So, Wind frowned. Who's lying? Shadow waved his hands to get everyone's attention. Yeah, this would go on for a while. The fake has Hyrule's memories. There was a long pause. Seriously? Legend asked. I believe it, Wild said, still being held tightly by Twilight. Fake Twi called me pup. Twilight visibly stiffened. He what? New plan then, Warrior said. Like what? We make them fight each other and hope the real Hyrule wins? One of the Hyrule eyed his doppelganger, a tad frightened. Are we sure I should even be standing next to him? Hey, the other Hyrule said, I want nothing more than to fly away from you right now. Literally. Other Hyrule paled. This was getting confusing, and to add to the issue, Sky was pointing the Master Sword at Shadow, still, which was definitely not a combination Four wanted. Legend, one of the Hyrules took a half step forward. It's me, I swear, it's really me. The other Hyrule looked like he wanted to speak, but he bit down on his lower lip. His eyes locked on Legend's, gaze wide and clearly afraid. Legend looked back and forth between the two, his own expression growing more and more nervous, afraid. I trust you, the Hyrule said. I know you'll make the right decision. I know you will. Legend looked back and forth between the two. The one on the left stood silent. The one on the right kept his pleading gaze on Legend. Legend cursed. I don't know. Silence. Shadow locked eyes with Four. I do. Four took a deep breath. Okay, everyone get away from the Hyrules. Legend whirled around. I'm not letting a Dark Link. I'm a Shadow, Shadow interrupted. Dark versions of you are different. They possess your skills and appearances, yes, but that's it. A Shadow possesses your skills, appearances, and your memories, a literal reflection of you. Darks are twisted versions that have no mental tie to you. Then what makes you different from the others? Warrior demanded. Why kill the others if they're just our reflections? Shadow looked at Warriors, eyebrows raised. I know you've met your Shadow before. Warriors looked like he'd been slapped. Would you really, Shadow asked, take a chance on his good side? Warriors did not speak for a long time. Then a very quiet, no, was muttered. No, I wouldn't. Four stepped forward. Shadow saved my life on my adventure. He helped me defeat Vadi at the cost of his life. I trust him with my life. If you can't trust him, that's fine, but trust me. A long pause. Time nodded slowly. I trust you, Four. Me too, Wind said. Okay, Twilight said after a silent conversation with Wild. Sky and Warriors looked at Four, then at Shadow, then back at Four. Very well. Sky put the Master Sword away. Warriors gave a jerky nod. Four turned back to Legend. Legend? Legend looked between the Hyrules, then at Four. He looked like he'd just swallowed a boulder. Okay, but he pointed at Shadow. If you so much as agreed, Shadow cut in. I'll even give you my sword to do it. Legend looked back at the two Hyrule. Hang in there, kid. You're gonna be okay. Four clapped his hands. Everyone over there. He pointed at a far wall. Four waited until everyone was clear. Okay, now all of you stay there no matter what happens next. Got it? Stubborn agreements were grumbled, but Four barely paid them mind. He was pretty sure he knew who Shadow had lunged at, but he glanced at Shadow in a silent question. Shadow pointed to the one on the right before running his finger across his neck. Kill him. Four pointed to the Hyrule on his left. Don't interfere. Get over with the others. Hyrule looked relieved as he was told, running straight to Legend, who hesitantly wrapped his arms around the traveler. Which just left. Four drew his sword and pointed it at the imposter. I know what you are. The imposter didn't look impressed. And what is that? Your Hyrule Shadow, Four said, brought to life in some form of magic in this temple. Am I wrong? There was some shifting along the wall and the sound of a few weapons slipping free. Four glared in that direction, and it died down pretty quick. Hyrule Shadow looked surprised. Four, you really aren't believing that evil form of yours? It's obviously a trick, using the memory of an old friend. Shadow growled from behind Four. Why you? Shadow, Four snapped. I got this. The imposter's eyes flickered to Shadow, and the surprised look was replaced with anger. I suppose there's no use in pretending anymore. The imposter's posture shifted from cowering, pleading, innocent to something more dark. I hope you're proud of yourself, traitor. I take that, Shadow drew his sword, as a compliment. Four smirked at Shadow. As you should, brother dear. The imposter's glare darkened. Well, I wouldn't count you lucky yet, he smiled darkly. You should ask your little Shadow why he saved me for last. Four frowned. I assume because Time's Shadow would have wiped us out with the snap of his fingers? Hyrule's shade laughed. It was cold and deep and sent shivers down Four's spine. Oh, he could have, but he couldn't do this. The shadow flickered. Four felt Shadow stiffen behind him, and he let out a curse as Hyrule's shadow seemed to grow bigger. It rose in height and width, and its eyes did not turn the suspected red, but a deep, glowing purple, into something that looked familiar but also impossible. Off to the side, Four heard the heroes draw weapons, and many of them curse while Hyrule dropped to his knees and let out a quiet, no. And Four drew his sword and rose it above his head so there was a blinding flash of light. Blue shifted forward into a defensive position immediately. Ganon? Seriously? Questions later, Vio glared at him. Fight now. Yee! Red shrieked when the no longer Hyrule-shaped shadow threw a fireball in their general direction. Green jumped forward and parried it back. Blue, Red, you take the left. Vio, Shadow, right. I'll go from the front. He glared at the mix of shocked, horrified, and confused looks from the other links. You all stay put. We'll explain later. And then they attacked. End of chapter 6.